gained some great insights and value from your session the next, 45 minutes or so. So I'll hand it over to Corinne with that for you guys to kick off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Alicia. I'm gonna start and ask you how you slept last night.
I always sleep well on a Casper, so yeah. I slept very well.
Yeah, I need one essentially, or I need some kids to sleep through the night a little bit better because they're getting too old. But I completely agree with Casper's idea of what could happen with a more well-rested world. And I think as women in marketing, we all feel that at some point, because sometimes it just feels like there's not enough hours in the day. So I'm so excited to talk to you today. I know we've been talking a bunch about everything you've done at Casper, but there's been a whole lot before Casper that's equally as interesting and to me makes you such a well-rounded and interesting marketer. You've really worked at brands from a lot of angles, including but not limited to generally as a strategy consultant on the agency side, on the creative agency side, at Ralph Lauren as in marketing, as well as the Peninsula where sales kind of also came in under you for marketing, and most recently, obviously at Casper. In all of those roles, I'm really curious how you think about the most essential skills that were important to helping you be successful in all those roles. And then, of course, what you think you picked up or sharpened along the way in each one of those to make you the marketer, the 360 holistic marketer you are today.
Well, I think it's always interesting when you have the opportunity to have conversations with you in preparation for something like today, because you take a moment to kind of stop and reflect a little bit. But I think overall, each role I've had has built into the next one. I started out my career, as you mentioned, in strategy consulting and executive training and development, where we were really focused on creating a kind of a strong foundation of building strategies that drove business results. And we were so heavily focused on working to understand how strategic investments maximized ROI and shareholder value. And I think when you start as a generalist and you're working across many different industries and you're traveling globally and seeing what's similar but also different across each of those, when you then start to go deeper on the brand side, you have an ability to kind of look back and say, you know what, here is something that happened in this industry that I can now put into this category, or I learned this and it accelerated growth and now I'm excited to try that. And I think even though I haven't been on the agency side in a while and I've been on the brand side, some of my favorite conversations continue to be with former colleagues and people that are on the agency side, because they're continuing to work across brands and continue to have that unique perspective. So, as you mentioned, I think working on the strategy consulting side created a foundation. And then when I worked on the agency side with brands like Sony and MTV and Samsung, you really started to see, whether it was technology or entertainment or fragrance, what are the trends and things that are really going to help build the business at the same time as build the brand. And so by the time I got to my first brand role, which was at Ralph Lauren, I really had embedded in me that you didn't want to have a trade-off there, and that there was a way to really focus on building brand while at the same time building business. And I think today, when you look at Casper, there's such an opportunity to continue to build in a brand that isn't yet that old of a brand. It's only 7 years old. And it's very adept at performance marketing, but it's the power of those two things together that continue to accelerate growth. And so I think overall, when I look at everything I've done, I think and it was echoed earlier today, but it's really always putting the consumer at the center. That really drives your vision and your strategies, how you leverage data, as well as just building out consumer experiences in general. And the second thing is really empowering and investing in your team. I think really making sure that you're flexible and adaptable. I think the last 18 months have certainly taught us all how to be both flexible and adaptable. But I think the same is really important in a management style. And I think starting out at a company that was really focused on strategy consulting and executive training and development, it wasn't just doing the work that was important, it was how the work got done that was equally important, and really making sure that you're thinking that through and helping your team to understand in these complex organizations and environments, how can I show up and be a really strong cross-functional partner within the organization? I think we're seeing now where you can get data from, so many different resources, and there's so many different channels. As a marketer, the success really comes from that combined team effort. So it's really important to build those cross-functional relationships. And I think overall, I've also just seen, a valuable thread emerge across each of these organizations, that when you're able to tap into culture, you can really authentically connect with consumers. And so when I was on the agency side, we launched the Rock Band franchise that included the Beatles Rock Band. And that was the first time anyone had ever had the opportunity to even experience the Beatles music digitally. It wasn't even on iTunes yet. And that first digital expression, where we were able to recreate Abbey Road and invite people into that world and actually participate in that iconic walk, not just as a still image. I think it's something when you can connect emotionally and really tap into things that are important to them as a brand, you can start to build a relationship. And I've tried to do that, whether that was at Ralph Lauren or Peninsula or at Casper.
Yeah. So that, speaking of cultural relevancy and knowing certainly that all the brands you've been at most recently are very embedded in culture and use culture in a lot of ways. And certainly your track record shows that you've been able to tap into culture successfully in all these different brands. My question is, how do you stay plugged in? How do you know that you are doing it right? How do you be brave enough to put something out there, especially to tap into culture and get those exponential benefits? And what does that process look like for you? Or is it, how do you deal with mitigating the risk of playing around with tapping into culture when it comes to brand?
I think you need to have a strategic approach, but also, to your point, be willing to take risks and to be brave as a marketer. And so I think there's an opportunity now more than ever to take more calculated risks. So, I think that starts with consumer insights and really understanding foundationally what's important. And so at Casper, we really aim to solve sleep problems. And so we can tap into that. And, we learned that one of the top challenges that people have falling asleep is sleeping hot. And so as a result, we were able to launch a new product line that really helped you stay cool all night long through a number of different products. And so we launched the Snow mattress in April, and that also was at the time where we launched our new platform, Love Your Tomorrow. And so I think as a brand, when we looked at what was happening in the world coming out of the pandemic, how we wanted to show up for our consumers, we knew that we want to show up not just in offering products, but really paying attention to things like wellness. And I think sleep has become a real pillar of wellness, and also improving anxiety. People report, a level of anxiousness. So how can we show up to help them with that? And then just overall optimizing one's life. And so whether that's falling to sleep faster, we have the glow light that's created that helps with that. I think overall, it's just really important to pay attention to what's happening out there, to be a really active participant in culture and see what the conversations are about, and then authentically figure out how you can participate.
Yeah, and I certainly hear everything you're saying so much in the ethos today, especially the last 18 months of even about optimizing your life. I mean, you can go down subsets of people who have tracked every aspect of themselves and have every device and health gadget possible. But that's really something that I've certainly seen and felt, and I'm sure most people watching have seen and felt in the last 18 months. How much has post-pandemic, you came on this job, you know, and all this happened, how much have consumer behaviors changed over the last 18 months and that you've seen or that have impacted your strategy? Obviously, you've really picked up on the zeitgeist of pandemic wellness and but definitely tapping into a zeitgeist there. Is there anything else from a consumer behavior point of view, or just generally from media consumption to conversations that kind of surprised you, or was something that you thought was a really great opportunity for Casper in this past year and a half?
You know, I think what I mentioned before, I think, you know, overall, I think people are really viewing sleep as a pillar of wellness. And so just as you started off the conversation saying, how did you sleep last night? It's almost how you slept really impacts your entire day, and therefore so much of your life. And I think, you know, our CEO, Philip Krim, asked the question, you know, can you imagine the potential of a well-rested world? And I think we've, since we started, but also especially, you know, coming out of the last 18 months, continuing to look at how we can show up for our consumers. And I think when you look at, you know, the sleep channel that helps you fall asleep that we have on Spotify, and a lot of the content that we've created that's out there, I think what we're trying to do is look at, as a brand, how we can show up in different aspects of sleep and our consumers' lives. And so I think it's really about meeting consumers where they are. And I think right now, people, if you look at how much conversation happens even on social around sleep, and, you know, the number of people in the category, in sleep tech, in, you know, meditation apps, in everything that's even adjacent to this, I think looking at those macro trends, you can see this is something that people really care about, and they see how having a well-rested night contributes to their success in life. And I think that's why, you know, we're really focused on providing products and showing up in consumers' life in a way to enhance that.
Yeah, and there are certainly so many ways that Casper has found to show up in consumers' lives, right? Content has always been a really standout component of your strategy. I know I've read you know, very well researched primary research academic papers on sleep from Casper, but I've also played the games on the subways in the out-of-home transit ads. So how do you think about content? How does the brand guide the content strategy, especially when there's so much that you're doing in so many places to show up in these consumers' lives? And how have you kind of used brand to guide content strategy since you've been on board?
I think overall we want to be a real sleep authority for people and be able to give them real valuable information. And at the same time, as a brand, we really have always been about joyful experiences. And so very much what you alluded to, you know, we want to continue to spread that joy. And so when we launched, you know, our Love Your Tomorrow platform in April around our cooling collection that was focused on a real sleep problem, which is sleeping hot, you know, we partnered with Vanessa Bear from SNL to embody tomorrow. And it was really very much focused on continuing to spread joy. We wanted her to show up in your life, showing you how you can have a better tomorrow and make you smile. We didn't want to just say, here, we've solved this sleep problem. We wanted to do it in a way that's decidedly Casper, which is, you know, have you walk away saying that was joyful, that, you know, that made my day, you know, feel better. I laughed. And so I think as a brand, we want to sit in those two places. We want to solve your sleep problems and give you an array of products that does that. And at the same time, give you content and have you interact in a way with the brand that feels very authentic.
Yeah. And is Vanessa Bear as fun as she seems like she would be?
I think, I think she's an incredible human. I think if
Yeah.
you look at her success, even post SNL, she has a new show that's come out. She's very dedicated to working with, some charitable endeavors that she had through her connection with some health things when she was younger. And I have to say, she's also a really thoughtful human being. Every time she sends an email to anyone on our team, I think she really embodies what the brand is all about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it's what was surprising to me when we were talking is when we were talking about this rebrand and Casper having been around 7 years, and it still feels new to me coming from a performance marketing point of view, because Casper was very much the D2C darling. They were known for investing in really taking growth and performance in one way in the marketing trades, and also investing in brand in a way when people were kind of picking a side. And to your point about being a business leader who understands that brand can drive business results, and even having a sales team report to you and all of these things that really make you do deep brand work, very respectful of the bottom line. How is it different? So coming from having all this experience and understanding the value of the business and driving business results, but coming from brands most recently that have incredible heritage, decades and decades of brand building on top of them, to a 7-year-old brand that's going through a rebrand already because everything must, new is just constantly in flux and changing, and you're 12 steps ahead of the game in the marketing trades anyway. That's our perception of Casper. What if you took both of these marketing organizations and both of these teams, maybe teleported your Ralph Lauren team into the Casper organization and vice versa, what would they most admire about each other?
I think that the adaptability and the commitment that Ralph Lauren has to brand is something that I think Casper would really respect. I think Ralph Lauren, even as a 50-year-old company and being maybe, a heritage brand, really had to focus on being consumer centric to see how it needed to evolve. And I think, when I was there, it was very much, you were starting to see the role that influencers were playing culturally. And it was at a time where we saw Haley Baldwin at the time was actually one of our e-com models. And we made the decision to put her into the campaign when we started to see how many Instagram followers she had and how she could really start to extend that platform with authentic storytelling. And we were one of the first to put Bella Hadid in a campaign. And I think as we were looking at, how can we connect with things that are happening? And I don't think you'd put EDM music and music festivals in the same sentence as Ralph Lauren, but we did partner on content where we created not just a brand video, but the official music video for the song Wake Me Up that went on to be, a hit, and now has over 2 billion views on YouTube. And we had our entire fall collection in there, and it enabled us to have both the earned and the paid media. And so I think, when you look at all those things that an established brand like that was willing to take those risks, and have those be calculated risks, we were able to tell a really authentic story, but also get incredible reach and also connect with new consumers that we were able to bring into the brand. And so I think Casper would love to sit in those meetings with that team and creatively have those conversations. Conversely, I think, I still see Ralph Lauren very committed to innovation. Casper, is so consumer centric from everything from how it builds products to, how it looks at a full funnel approach to marketing, and is so adept at looking at things across the entire funnel, building brand, and at the same time pulling all the levers and showing up in all the places where consumer conversation is taking place. And so, I think that they would actually, I'd love to see that collaboration take place, because I think they would both see actually a lot of similarities in how people show up in each organization.
Yeah, I can see the wheels turning already, Alicia. You're really committed to cross-functional team building. I absolutely I can tell that you put your money where your mouth is when it comes to all these things. One thing we did talk about a lot was with content and the importance of content and all the different ways you can go. That context is just as important or relevant. Can you expand on that a little bit and maybe give us some examples of, content in the right context and how that's one of your philosophies as a brand marketer?
Yeah, I think there's such a unique opportunity with so many platforms available to us as marketers that it's no longer a one size fits all. It's no longer about taking a lifestyle image and putting that image everywhere. It's really about taking the opportunity and looking at the channel and saying, what type of content makes sense here? And how can I show up very natively to whatever the consumer is experiencing and be there? And so I think anytime we're looking at different channels, TikTok was mentioned earlier today, but I think that's a great example of, I think Casper has an opportunity to be very joyful and fun in that platform that's very intrinsic to the brand. And we've done that. And I think, that wouldn't necessarily be the same thing that you might run in display or on TV. And so I think really looking at who you're reaching and who you're going after and how you can really personalize that content to their experience and again, make it better. So, I think another example is, our sleep channel here, where, we're showing up where you can access that through Spotify or YouTube, and you may be there and at a moment where you're looking to go to sleep, whether or not you have a Casper product or not, you can get to know us, and we're there and committed to helping you have a better night's rest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned about, as part of this, it's not just in one of your roles, it's not just how you do the work, it's how the work gets done. Again, that seems to really make sense with the content and the context. From your point of view right now, in your role as kind of a brand leader, how do you think about your job and what you are most responsible for? You strike me in our limited conversations as a woman who gets a lot done. So is it about driving the creativity? Is it about the execution? What are you most responsible for making happen, and how do you get these things done? How do you prioritize all this execution?
I think it's very important to have a strategic plan and really look at what are those business drivers and really have and be very clear about what the priorities are. I think it's equally important knowing what you say no to as what you say yes to. You can do things really well and make sure everything is connected when you put it through that strategic filter of how you're going to show up. So I think that's the first step. I think the second step is really allowing your team to do their job and really empowering them to get to do that work and add to it. I think it was said, earlier today, you want to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And I think I've been very lucky throughout my career to work with some really incredible people. And I always seek out people that have different points of views, that will challenge, what's being said in a meeting, because I think it's really through those robust conversations and the trust that you build within a team that you get to the best place. If you just have everybody in a room and you're nodding your head saying, yes, this is what we should do, that's probably not a good sign. It's really best when you can create a dynamic where people feel like they can come with a recommendation and an opinion. And I always like to say, my job is to show up and make the best recommendation based on what my role is here. Now, somebody may come with another piece of information that I didn't have and may add that to the conversation, and we may come out with a different conclusion. So I tried not to be so tied to the outcome, but rather making the best recommendation based on all of the inputs I have, and then coming to that that clear next step to ensure that the strategy and the execution are equally effective.
Great. Now, as someone who deals with performance marketers all day and knows how sometimes there can be a tension in between brand and performance and non-quantifiable aspects of brand, I guess I'll call them. You are able to build a cross-functional team. You joined this role and then completed a rebrand, a total rebrand, as you know, a relatively newer team member. And I'm curious, as for those of us who maybe kind of sit in the performance world and want to be able to talk about the value brand, or just brand marketers who are trying to do that themselves, you know, get a rebrand through and get all that buy-in in the organization. What advice could you have for people like us?
You know, I think it's really about having conversations with stakeholders, and you know, launching a brand platform like we did for Love Your Tomorrow doesn't happen with one person, right? It happens with an entire organization embracing something. And I think having a mission that's as ambitious as awakening the potential of a well-rested world. I still remember the first time I sat down and had breakfast with our chief commercial officer, Emily Arell, and she said, you know, I came to Casper because of this ambition. And I think when you have that shared ambition and then you're looking at how you're going to extend that, you sort of know that everybody signed up for what's possible. And so I think it's continuing to sit there, but really look at the things that you can measure. And there's a lot that you can look at, you know, direct traffic to your website. You can look at, you know, that versus paid. You can look at a lot of the things that brand drives and supports. And then I think you have to just look at things holistically and say, look at competitively, what are brands out there that you admire? You know, Peloton has been mentioned. There's been a lot of, you know, you look at a lot of the direct to consumer brands that are out there, and there has been an investment in brand. And so I think you can, you know, anecdotally feel confident saying that brand done and invested strategically only enhances performance. And even if you can't do that on every single thing, you can hold hands as an organization and say, you know, we know that there are going to be strategic trade-offs that we make here to get to the best possible place. But at the end of the day, I think the reason why consumers keep coming back is when you build an emotional connection, and you can't performance market your way out of that.
That's right. I love that. I'm going to write that down as a quote. Speaking of other things you can't performance market your way out of, Casper created a category and had to do a lot of consumer education. Some brands jumped on the bandwagon. There was a lot of copycats drafting off of brand equity that you built up. Do you have any new sets of considerations when you think about brand with this kind of D2C challenge, or does it even entrench you further into what you already knew about the importance of brand and what you need to do going forward?
Well, you know, they say imitation is the highest form of flattery. So, you know, I think with that becomes both a challenge and an opportunity, you know, from a business perspective. And that is, you have to continue to look at the stories that you're telling and think about what may already exist that you haven't shared yet, but will really connect with the consumer. And I think, you know, as a brand, we really, you know, have built a strong brand since launch. I think the founders were very committed to showing up in unique ways and unique places, and very much took experiential marketing into the realm that a lot of people leverage today. So I think there's a lot to be said on that foundationally. I think as a space gets more and more competitive, you have to think more uniquely about how you continue to differentiate and what are those stories that you're going to tell. And so I think there are some stories that, how we created the mattress and, why our mattress is the best mattress out there, and why our suite of products are the best sleep products out there. And we are certainly focused on telling those. And Casper, has a proprietary formula for how we put together a mattress, and that's called 4D sleep technology. And we look at the 4 dimensions of sleep, and your sleep isn't one dimensional, and we don't think your mattress should be either. And so really caring deeply about each of those, and looking at alignment and time, how long it takes you to fall asleep, and temperature, making sure that there's temperature regulation, and having that Casper signature feel in terms of touch. And I think when you have a product team and Casper Labs that is so focused on making the best products out there, you just continue to tell that story in new and different ways and bring that to the forefront. And I think consumers then learn more about your brand. But it's not that it's different than it was when you launched. It's just that there's more opportunity and territory to tell what's always been there.
Yeah. So in thinking about, building this this organization and your cross-functional teams, we've mentioned that, we talked a little about the Casper, dozens of roles open. I want to say 50, but I feel like that's too high to be right. But somewhere around that realm, what do you look for in your 4-dimensional team of marketers, or even not marketers, because it sounds like we want all opinions and ideas on the table on Alicia's team. What do you look for? What would it take to get hired? What are some of your priorities when it comes to building your teams?
I think it's really important to be adaptable. I think, in this environment that we're in, where, how you market this month may need to adjust slightly to how you market next month. I think it's really important to be able to do that. I think secondarily, I really look for people who are focused on finding solutions. There's always going to be a problem. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what organization you work for. And so how you show up and think about what's in front of you is really important. And then I think that the third thing, and I don't know if I'm looking for this when I'm interviewing, but it's more of something that I just think is important for all of us, is really, really focusing on our health. And I think, waking up every day and thinking about a product and the suite of products like Casper has really brought that to the forefront of my mind, because sometimes we can become so busy at our career and wanting to make sure that we can reply to every single email and get everything done. Our plates are always going to be really busy, but I think when you take care of yourself first, the way you're able to show up adds more value to your team. It adds more value to your family and more value to your friends. And so I would just say, I would just encourage people to continue to focus on that.
Wow. Has that changed you as a manager, coming to Casper and thinking about things like sleep and health and everything that's happened the past year and a half? Do you feel like there are things you do differently now in managing your team than maybe 2 years ago?
I think so. I mean, I think that, there were times where, I can remember being in different organizations and you kind of see somebody leaving early with their gym bag and you're still like doing, whatever you need to be doing to finish out the day. And you're like, "Oh, I can't believe that person's leaving." And I find myself now saying to our team, make sure that you go for a walk, make sure that you're, taking the time to exercise. And I think you're starting to see the benefits of what we're providing to people from a product perspective and the difference that that's making in their life. And you want to make sure that your team and internally, it's really matching what you're saying externally. And so I think it's something that's become much more top of mind, with sleep being a pillar of wellness in general, and really having the belief that that's critically important. And I encourage everyone to do whatever they can to get a good night's rest, and whatever they can to make sure, that their health overall is a top priority.
Yeah. Well, Alicia, I've heard a lot, and besides this past 40 minutes, I've had a lot of great tips, and I understand the value of testing and learning, adaptability, making sure that you are taking calculated risks, and all those things that I'm going to take away from our conversation. Is there anything else you think that you would want women in marketing to know, whether about I actually, like my career, I have two stories, one that kind of revolves around what happened in maternity leave, and the other that's the narrative I tell people that, is a little bit revisionist history. So is there anything else you'd want to share with women in marketing about careers? And, we've heard a lot of people ask, if you were a younger self, what piece of career advice would you give them? Anything along those lines?
You never want to really sound cliche when you start to, think about these kinds of things. But I would say, when I look at the career that I've had, I've never stayed in the same industry, and I've taken a lot of risks, and it's always been a really big payoff. Going from, even on the brand side, Ralph Lauren, that was fashion and apparel, to the Peninsula Hotels, that was hospitality, to Casper. Those are three very distinct types of brands. And each, I had not worked in the mattress category before, but I do think allowing yourself the opportunity to take those risks sometimes have the biggest rewards, and know that, and have the confidence in yourself that you will be able to figure it out. I think foundationally, we are taught in, early roles in our career what we need to carry that forward. And I think one thing I would just say is that, I was very lucky to have an incredible mentor in my first job. And so I would say, seek out a mentor. It's somebody who I still talk to today, and I've maintained that relationship. And I think that's incredibly valuable. And then turn around and do that same thing for people throughout your career. I remember asking, how can I thank you for everything you've given me? And, he looked at me and said, you'll continue to do this for other people throughout your career. And so I think it's really important that, the topic women in marketing, that community is really important. As marketers, we're out there building communities all the time. And we know as marketers that it's very effective to leverage that. Build your own community, and make sure that, professionally, that's comprised of people that are going to help and support you, because no one's going to come with a magic wand and say, you worked so hard, here you go, here's this. It really comes down to you seeking advice, having relationships, and being able to chart that path for yourself. And I think, on the whole, most people really want to help other people in their careers. And so don't be afraid to ask.
Great, thank you. So don't be afraid to ask, because we are in the Q&A portion, and you can feel free to ask. Alicia, anything you like?
Hi guys. I think we're towards the end here just because we have our next panels on here. But thank you so much. This was such a great session. And I loved, your feedback at the end, Alicia, of just, taking what past mentors and people in your life have given you and using that to help usher in the next generation of brand marketers. So we really appreciate you speaking on our stage today. I know everyone tuning in definitely took a lot of value from